He turned on the outdoor shower and forced her to bathe in the freezing air as a lesson, watching her collapse as the icy water stole the breath from her lungs. He believed no one would ever know the truth. He believed her suffering would end right there. But he had no idea her father was a billionaire, with a secret network built to protect her at any cost. When her emergency alert activated, the night exploded into a race of power, revenge, and justice, ready to tear his entire world apart. Stay with us, because the truth that follows is even more shocking than you think. Drop a comment below so we can talk about it. The night settled over the estate like a sheet of black ice, silent and unforgiving. Frost glimmered across the marble tiles of the central courtyard, each breath of wind cutting through the air with a sharp whistle. Maria Reyes stood just inside the glass doors of the mansion, clutching her cardigan closed against her chest. She was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and trembling from more than the cold. Something in her husband's eyes told her that tonight would become another memory she would try to forget. But the darkness outside was already waiting for her specifically, as if it had been told she was coming. Ethan Miller appeared behind her without warning. His reflection flickered across the glass like a distorted ghost. He grabbed her arm with a force that made her inhale sharply. She felt the pressure through the layers of wool, felt the bruising that would bloom beneath her skin by morning. His voice, low and controlled, brushed against her ear. It carried no warmth. It never did anymore. He said to step outside because she needed to learn how to behave. She whispered that the temperature was below freezing, that she was shaking already, that their son was kicking hard enough to make her wince. Ethan ignored every word. He tightened his fingers and pulled her through the doorway. The cold outside hit her with the violence of a slap. Air she inhaled felt like needles in her lungs. Her ankles wobbled on the slick marble, and she held her belly instinctively as if she could shield the child from the wind. Ethan kept moving, dragging her toward the tall steel frame in the center of the courtyard. It was the outdoor shower meant for summer afternoons by the pool. Now it stood like a metal skeleton surrounded by ice. She tried to pull back. He yanked harder. Maria's voice cracked as she begged him to stop. She told him she needed to sit. The baby was kicking too fast. Her breathing was too shallow. Ethan did not pause. He reached the shower and flicked the control valve with one practiced motion. Water blasted out instantly because the pipes were heated internally, but the moment the water hit the freezing air, it turned into a frigid torrent that steamed white at the edges. The sight alone made Maria's stomach clutch. The sound of the water slamming against the marble thundered through the courtyard. Ethan stepped aside and stared at her. His face held a coldness that rivaled the temperature around them. He ordered her to step under the water. He said she had been disobedient all day. She needed a lesson. Maria could not believe what she was hearing. She whispered that she was pregnant, that she could slip, that she felt faint already. Her breath fogged before her face. Her fingers were already numb. Ethan grabbed her wrist again and shoved her forward. Her feet slid across the icy tile, and before she could steady herself, the freezing water crashed down on her shoulders. She screamed, the shock ripping through her body like an electric current. Her breath disappeared. Her lungs locked tight. Every inch of her skin felt stabbed by 100 needles. The wool cardigan soaked instantly and clung to her body like a sheet of wet cement. The weight dragged her down until she fell to her knees beneath the relentless torrent. The baby kicked violently, a desperate protest inside her belly. She tried to curl forward to protect him, but another rush of water slapped the back of her head and sent her gasping. Her lips burned with cold, then went numb. She could not feel her fingers. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably. The cold tunnel vision began. She tried to push herself back, but the marble was too slick. Her palms slipped again and again. Ethan watched with his arms crossed. He said she was overreacting. He said a little cold never killed anyone. She tried to speak. The words refused to form. Her throat felt frozen shut. She lifted her hand weakly toward him, not begging, just trying to show him that she could not feel her arm anymore, that the shivering had become shaking that she could not control, that she was no longer acting but collapsing. But Ethan's expression never shifted. He was a statue carved from ice. A deep tremor rolled through her abdomen. It was not a contraction, not exactly, but a warning that her body was entering a dangerous threshold. Hypothermia and pregnancy did not mix. Her vision blurred. She blinked hard. The world doubled. She tried again to pull herself out from under the water, but her knees slid helplessly. She whispered one word through chattering teeth. She said, "Please." Then her legs gave out. She fell sideways, her shoulders slamming against the marble, her cheek pressed to the freezing tile. Her hair stuck to the ground in a wet tangle. Her breathing came in short, ragged gasps. Her heart pounded erratically. She felt something tightening low in her belly, something she knew was not normal. Panic clawed through her chest. Something above her clicked. The security floodlights lining the courtyard snapped on with a harsh white glare. Motion detection. The lights recognized her collapse as a high-risk movement. The cameras along the edges of the roof rotated with soft mechanical hums, their lenses locking onto her limp form under the shower. The red recording indicators blinked steadily, capturing every second with clinical precision. Her smart medical bracelet on her wrist vibrated with a faint buzz. It had detected a severe drop in skin temperature and heart rate variability. It transmitted an automated distress alert. Maria did not know any of that. She only knew the cold was inside her now. She could not stop shaking. She tried to lift her head, but her body refused to obey. Ethan stepped closer. For a moment she thought he might help her. Instead, he crouched, tilted his head, and told her to get up. His tone held irritation, not concern. She attempted to rise, but her arm buckled. He exhaled sharply. Disappointment. Annoyance. As if she were an inconvenience, not a wife. Not a mother carrying his child. The water kept pouring, the cold kept biting. Maria felt her vision shrinking inward, the edges darkening. She sensed the world tilting. A pulse of terror shot through her chest. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. She thought of her baby. She whispered again, barely audible, a plea to protect him, to hold on, to stay alive just long enough for someone to help. But the courtyard was empty. The mansion behind her was quiet. The night was indifferent. Her final coherent thought was that she could not feel her heartbeat anymore. Then everything blurred into a smear of white light, pounding water, and the distant sound of her bracelet sending a silent cry for help into the cold air. The sound of the water crashing onto the marble was the first thing Maria truly heard when consciousness flickered back into her. It roared like a waterfall inside her ears, even though her head was still several steps away from the metal frame. She blinked slowly, unsure how long she had been kneeling. Cold mist rose from the stream and floated across the courtyard like thin ghosts. She tasted metal on her tongue. Her chest felt tight, as if someone had tied a rope around her ribs. The night was colder now, or maybe her body had simply lost the ability to produce warmth. She would never know. Because Ethan stepped toward her again. His footsteps clipped against the marble in a steady rhythm. No panic, no concern, only irritation. He reached down, grabbed her by the upper arm, and yanked her upright. Pain shot through her shoulder, and she gasped. Her vision spun for a moment, turning the lights above into streaks of white. She felt the world tilt again, but Ethan did not allow her to fall. He held her only long enough to reposition her like an object he intended to discard. His fingers dug into her skin through the drenched fabric of her dress. She felt faint. Maria tried to speak. Her throat quivered with each attempt. She whispered that she could not breathe properly, that her heart was racing, that she felt something tightening in her abdomen. Ethan said nothing. He simply released her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling forward. Her feet hit the edge of the shower platform. Her body lurched forward uncontrollably. Her hands flew out, hoping to catch something, anything, but there was nothing to hold. She fell straight into the freezing water. The impact was instant and brutal. The water exploded across her body with a force that knocked the air from her lungs. She screamed, but the scream collapsed into a strangled cry the moment the shock hit her. Her entire torso convulsed. The water hammered down on her shoulders, her back, her stomach. It felt like sheets of broken glass poured over her skin. Her breathing fractured into short gasps that refused to deepen. She fought for air. Her body refused to obey. The cardigan, already soaked from earlier, became a heavy trap that clung to her skin and dragged her downward. The knitted fabric sucked in water until it felt like she was wearing a slab of ice. Her dress clung to the curve of her pregnant belly, outlining every trembling movement of the child inside. The baby kicked hard, as if reacting to the sudden shock, as if trying to escape the violent cold. The pressure in her abdomen sharpened, and her pulse jumped painfully. Maria tried to push herself away from the water. She planted her hands against the marble floor, but her palms slipped instantly. The ground was slick, with cold runoff. Her knees hit the tile hard, sending a jolt of pain up her legs. She clawed at the floor again, but the water pounded her down. She could not lift her head. She could not stop shivering. She could barely think. Ethan remained where he was, just outside the reach of the water. His arms were crossed over his chest. His coat hung open at his sides. Even through the haze of shock, she saw his face clearly. He looked bored, annoyed, as if she were inconveniencing him by suffering, as if the sight of his pregnant wife collapsing under a torrent of freezing water was an unpleasant chore he wanted to finish quickly. Maria called out his name again. The sound came out as a cracked whisper. He did not move. She tried to roll onto her side to protect her belly. Another wave of water smashed against her back and forced her flat again. Her breath burst out in a choked gasp. Her fingers tingled and then went numb. She could no longer feel her toes. Her jaw locked in rapid shivers. She bit her lip hard enough to taste blood, hoping the pain would keep her awake. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was calm, as if giving instructions to a misbehaving child. He told her to get up. He told her to stop acting. He told her to stop embarrassing herself. Maria wanted to tell him that she could not feel her body. She wanted to say that her skin burned, that her heart raced too fast, that the cold had sunk into her bones. She wanted to say that their baby was in danger, but the words lodged in her throat. Only a whimper escaped. The water pounded against her skull with relentless rhythm. Each drop felt like another strike from a fist. Her breathing shortened further. She could not expand her chest fully. Panic clawed up her spine. She pressed a hand to her belly. The muscles there tightened again. Something felt wrong. Terribly wrong. She needed warmth. She needed oxygen. She needed to lie down on something that was not drenched in ice. But Ethan watched her with a look of pure disdain. She saw it clearly when she briefly lifted her head. He tilted his chin slightly, an expression he always used when he wanted to make her feel small. His eyes traveled from her trembling hands to her shaking belly and then back to her face. There was no fear in him, no guilt, only annoyance. The courtyard lights glowed cold and bright overhead. The mist rising from the water swirled around her like fog. Her breath came in short puffs that vanished instantly. She tried to pull herself out from the direct fall of the water, but her limbs refused to cooperate. Her muscles twitched uncontrollably. Her vision flickered between sharp and blurred. She felt herself slipping further into a depth she could not fight alone. When her hand slipped for the third time, Ethan finally uncrossed his arms, but he did not step forward to help her. He stepped sideways, giving himself a better angle to watch. He said she needed to understand consequences. He said she had pushed him too far. He said she had brought this upon herself. Maria barely processed his words. Her body was shutting down. Her ears buzzed. Her fingers curled weakly. The cold consumed her completely. A violent tremor rocked her abdomen. She cried out, but the cry dissolved into the roar of falling water. Her entire body spasmed as she tried to shield her belly again, but her strength was gone. Her arms trembled and fell limp at her sides. She toppled sideways, hitting the marble hard. The water continued to crash against her back, splashing over her face, drowning every breath she tried to take. Her eyes fluttered. The world dimmed. Her heart thudded irregularly, too slow one moment, too fast the next. She stared up at the sky, unable to move, unable to fight. Snowflakes drifted from the clouds, melting instantly when they touched the stream of water above her. She wondered faintly if the baby could feel everything she felt. She wondered if he was afraid. Her body convulsed again. A hollow sound escaped her chest. She tried once more to say Ethan's name, not as a plea, but as a warning that something catastrophic was happening inside her. Her lips barely moved. The sound was lost. Ethan sighed, a long, deep sigh of disappointment. Then Maria finally broke. Her body slumped forward under the force of the water. Her arms folded beneath her, her cheek pressed against the icy tile. Her breathing became shallow and ragged, her eyes glazed. For a moment, she thought she was floating, drifting away from the pain, drifting away from the cold, and then she felt nothing at all. The water kept pouring. Ethan kept watching. The courtyard kept echoing with the sound of her collapse. The night kept getting colder, and Maria Reyes lay motionless beneath the freezing torrent, seconds from disappearing into the darkness completely. For a long moment, nothing moved in the courtyard except the freezing stream of water beating relentlessly against Maria's limp body. The night pressed in with a suffocating stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see whether she would take another one. Frost crept across the marble tiles in thin, jagged patterns. The air hung heavy and sharp. Even the wind seemed to pause, leaving only the roar of the water and the faint, broken sound of Maria's desperate attempts to breathe. Her cheek lay against the stone, pale and motionless. Strands of wet hair clung to her skin like frozen vines. Her cardigan, drenched and weighed down, pressed heavily against her ribs each time she tried to inhale. Her belly, taut and trembling, rose in shallow jerks that no longer resembled normal breathing. She could not lift her head. She could not turn her body. Her consciousness slipped in and out, like a light flickering in a storm. Every flicker was weaker than the last. Ethan stood several steps away, staring at her with an expression that hovered between disdain and irritation. His arms remained crossed. His breath came out in visible clouds that drifted upward, dissolving in the cold air. His eyes were unreadable. Not because he hid emotion, but because there was nothing to hide. He looked at her the same way someone might look at a broken object. Inconvenient, disappointing, something to be thrown away or replaced. Maria did not see his expression clearly anymore. Her vision had become a distorted blur. She was aware of colors, of movement, of cold white lights overhead, but the details slipped from her mind faster than she could grasp them. Her eyelashes fluttered as water hammered her face. Her lips trembled, her jaw locked in uncontrollable shivers. She tried to speak again, but no sound emerged. Only a faint, pitiful rasp that vanished under the crash of the water. A sharp tightening in her abdomen made her gasp. The cold had forced her muscles into an involuntary spasm. Her child, trapped inside her failing body, kicked again. The strike was weak, as if even the baby was exhausted by the cold. Panic churned through her chest. She needed to protect him. She needed to get up. She needed to get warm. But her limbs were dead weight. Her fingers curled inward, too numb to move. Her legs refused every command. Her lungs struggled to draw in air, each breath shallow and fragmented. She opened her mouth wide, trying instinctively to pull in oxygen, but the freezing water splashed into her mouth and chilled the inside of her throat. She coughed violently, her entire body jerking forward. The movement drained what little strength she had left. She sagged again, weaker than before, her cheek pressing deeper into the marble that felt like a slab of ice. The silence around her grew louder. She could hear her heartbeat, uneven and strained, thudding inside her skull. She could hear the tight clicks of her bracelet as it tried repeatedly to send out distress alerts. She could hear the quiet, rhythmic hum of the security cameras rotating to track her movements. She could even hear her own breathing, soft and ragged, sounding less like breathing and more like the final, fragile edge of life. Ethan shifted his stance slightly. The sound of his shoes scraping the marble echoed across the courtyard. It startled her, though she could not react physically. She blinked slowly, trying to stay awake, trying not to slip into the heavy darkness, pressing at the edges of her vision. Her mind drifted in fragments, a thought, a memory, a face. Her father's voice, then nothing, then something again. Each time she resurfaced, the cold dragged her back down. Another contraction rolled through her abdomen, more forceful this time. Her breath hitched. She tried to curl her body, but her muscles refused to obey. She whispered inside her mind. She begged her child to hold on. She begged herself to stay conscious. She begged for anyone to hear her. But Ethan stood only a few feet away, a silent monument to cruelty. watching her deterioration with no urgency, no empathy, no fear. The courtyard lights flickered, as if sensing the shift in her condition. The glow became harsher, revealing the mist rising from her soaked clothing. Her skin had begun to change color. A faint bluish tint crawled across her fingers and lips. Her eyes, when they opened, held a glassy sheen. The signs were unmistakable. Her body was entering a stage of hypothermic shock that could kill both her and the life inside her. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears again. Each beat felt heavier, slower. She attempted to lift one hand, to let Ethan see how weak she was, to show him her fingers no longer responded. But the movement failed halfway. Her arm trembled violently, then collapsed. Her hand slapped weakly against the tile. A sharp gasp left her mouth, one she could not control. Her chest rose once more, shallow and slow. Then it stalled for a moment that seemed far too long. Her mind screamed at her to breathe. Her body did not respond. She lay there, frozen and silent, until her chest finally lifted in a ragged drag of air that sounded like a drowning voice reaching toward the surface. Relief did not come. The desperation only grew. Her lungs burned. Her vision dimmed again. The courtyard blurred into streaks of white and gray. She heard Ethan speak at last. His voice was cold, flat, almost bored. He told her to stop pretending. He told her to get up. He told her that he was done waiting. His tone sliced through the silence like a knife. She wanted to scream that she was not pretending. She wanted to shout that she could not move. But all she managed was a low, broken exhale. Her body jerked in another involuntary shiver. The water continued to fall. The tile beneath her pulsed with the cold of the winter air. She felt the edges of her consciousness dissolving again, like ink spreading in water. She knew she was slipping. She knew she had only seconds before the darkness claimed her, but she was powerless to stop it. Maria tried to open her eyes one more time. She tried to focus on the lights above. She tried to hold on to anything that could anchor her, but her eyelids fell shut on their own. Her body slackened. Her breathing slowed to an unnatural rhythm. The silence deepened, swallowing the last remnants of her strength. In that chilling stillness, one undeniable truth settled over the courtyard. Maria Reyes was no longer fighting the cold. She was losing to it. The moment Maria's body collapsed completely, the courtyard seemed to shift. The cold that had bitten at her skin now wrapped around her like a shroud. She lay motionless, curled slightly on her side, with the freezing water pounding mercilessly onto her back and neck. Her hair spread across the marble in a dark, wet halo. The world around her pulsed with dim light and bone-chilling silence. Then something unseen awakened. A soft mechanical buzz stirred above her, almost imperceptible under the roar of the water. The security system of the mansion had finally recognized that something was wrong. Motion sensors, temperature sensors, and biometric scanners built into the estate's surveillance network began activating one by one. Lights flickered along the upper walls. Cameras rotated. Lenses extended with soft clicks. The inner machinery of the Reyes security integration system came alive with clinical precision. Maria did not notice any of it. She could barely hold on to consciousness. Her breaths came shallow and slow. Each inhale seemed to require every ounce of strength she had left. Her limbs were numb. She felt nothing below her shoulders. Every drop of water struck her body like a hammer of ice. The shock had entered her bloodstream. Her pulse fluttered weakly. Still, the cameras watched. They watched without emotion. They watched without mercy. They watched because they were designed to record every second of potential danger. And Maria Reyes, lying still beneath the freezing torrent, had triggered every warning the system possessed. One camera zoomed, adjusting its focus with a precise whir. Another identified her posture as a high-risk position. A third detected the erratic rise and fall of her breathing. The bracelet on her wrist vibrated again. Its internal sensors documented her falling temperature and unstable pulse. A silent digital report uploaded itself to the house's security hub. The courtyard lights brightened suddenly, casting a harsh glow over her shivering form. The cold shine revealed the bluish tint along her fingers. It revealed the way her cardigan clung like frozen armor to her trembling chest. It revealed the way her pregnant belly tightened and loosened in small spasms. a sign her child was reacting to the extreme conditions. Ethan flinched at the sudden brightness. He turned toward one of the cameras, annoyed by the interruption. He raised a hand as if to wave it off, as though the surveillance system were a bothersome servant intruding at the wrong time. The tiny red recording light reflected in his eyes. He scowled and stepped aside to avoid the direct beam. He never considered that the machine above him might become the witness that would destroy him. Maria's breathing hitched again. A wet coughing sound escaped her chest. Her entire body jerked once, violently, before going still. The movement triggered a new series of alerts. A sensor near the doorway recognized signs of physical distress. Another identified the temperature of the water falling on her body. The internal display registered it as dangerously cold for a pregnant woman. The system flagged the situation as medical trauma. Still, the only human present did nothing. Ethan folded his arms again and stared at her with the same contempt he had shown from the start. He muttered under his breath, irritated that she continued to lie there. He told her to stop being dramatic. He told her to get up before she embarrassed herself any further. His words were swallowed by the roar of water. Maria did not hear him. She heard nothing now, except a faint humming inside her skull. Her fingers twitched weakly, a final instinctive attempt to move. She felt the cold tightening around her heart. Her breath stuttered into a shallow gasp, then another, then a pause so long it felt like her lungs had forgotten their purpose. Her eyelids fluttered open briefly. She saw the courtyard lights blur into halos. She saw her breath float away in small clouds. She saw nothing of Ethan, nothing of the world. She slipped again toward unconsciousness. The bracelet on her wrist flashed red for the first time. Not yellow, not orange, red. It meant emergency. It meant danger to the mother. It meant danger to the child. It communicated faster than any human voice could. It sent a distress signal to the house's central system, and the house responded instantly. A loud beep echoed across the courtyard, then another, and another. The cameras swiveled again. The lights pulsed twice. The system activated its highest priority alert. The estate had been custom-built with medical-grade monitoring features, because Manuel Reyes, billionaire patriarch, protected his daughter with the same intensity he protected his empire. It was the last gift he gave her before the wedding. A gift she never imagined she would rely on to survive. Ethan froze. The beeping irritated him. He glanced at Maria as if she were the cause of every inconvenience in his life. He stepped closer to her, kneeling just enough to study her face. Her lips were blue, her eyelids half open, her skin pale and rigid, her breathing shallow to the point of barely existing. For the first time, Ethan's expression shifted. Not fear, not guilt, not regret, only annoyance at the fact that her body had become too weak to obey him. He reached out and shook her shoulder, not gently, but with the rough impatience of a man waking someone from sleep. Her head rolled lifelessly to the side. She did not respond. He cursed under his breath. Another alert sounded, this one deeper, louder, a continuous tone that rattled through the courtyard like the toll of a bell. The security hub inside the mansion had switched into emergency mode and was now transmitting a medical alarm to the master account holder. Far away from the courtyard, on the wrist of a man sitting in a private office, a notification vibrated. Then another, then a third. The bracelet on Maria's hand had reached its critical threshold. The cameras had flagged her motionless body as a potential casualty. The system had detected that her core temperature was dropping at a dangerous rate. It sent the information with time-stamped data and video attachments. The estate had determined that Maria Reyes was in danger of death. Back in the courtyard, the water continued to fall. Maria's body was still. Her chest rose only enough to keep her alive. The child inside her moved faintly, responding to the stress as best it could. The air felt colder, sharper, heavier, as if winter itself was leaning in to watch the final moments. The cameras recorded everything. They recorded Ethan standing over her. They recorded her body twitching before going still. They recorded the water crushing her breath. They recorded the signs of hypothermia. They recorded the moment her bracelet flashed a violent red. They recorded the truth that would soon bring an army to that courtyard. And the truth that Ethan Miller had no idea, the cameras never blinked. The alarm that echoed through the courtyard did not stop. It pulsed like a heartbeat made of metal, sharp and insistent, each sound cutting through the night air with a chilling authority. Ethan winced at the noise, glaring at the bright red warning light blinking on Maria's medical bracelet. He muttered something under his breath, irritated that even unconscious she was creating problems for him. He had no idea that the very alert irritating him was already traveling far beyond the walls of the estate. Miles away, inside a high-security office layered with biometric locks and bulletproof glass, a phone vibrated on a polished black desk. The vibration was not subtle. It rattled violently, skidding slightly before the screen lit up. The device displayed a single message marked in flashing red. Critical maternal distress detected. Vital signs unstable. Body temperature dangerously low. Location: Reyes Estate Courtyard. Manuel Reyes, billionaire, titan of industry, and father of the woman collapsing under a stream of freezing water, looked down at the screen. His face drained of color. He did not hesitate. His chair scraped the floor as he stood abruptly. His hand slammed down on a panel beside his desk. A sequence of lights blinked awake across the room. A red banner stretched across the large central monitor. Emergency protocol triggered. Rapid response authorization required. He pressed his authorization code with hands that shook once and then became steady as stone. The system responded instantly. 6 screens activated, each showing live feeds from the cameras around the estate. And on the main screen, under the harsh white glare of the courtyard lights, Manuel saw his daughter lying motionless on the ground. The freezing water hit her back without mercy. Her body did not move. Her fingers were stiff. Her skin had turned a terrifying shade of blue. For one horrifying second, Manuel could not breathe. Then a fire ignited inside him. He roared a single word: "Go." Across the city, engines roared to life. Black SUVs, identical and built like armored beasts, shot out from a private garage marked with the Reyes security insignia. Their tires screeched against the pavement. Their headlights cut through the night like white blades. Inside each vehicle sat men trained not for war, but for protection. Their faces were expressionless. Their movements synchronized. Their mission was singular and absolute: protect the daughter of Manuel Reyes at any cost. Back in the courtyard, Ethan finally stepped back from Maria, not out of concern, out of annoyance. He wiped water from his sleeve and muttered that she always made things more dramatic than necessary. He glanced toward the mansion, trying to decide whether he should drag her inside, now that the alarm was so irritating. He still believed he was in control. He still believed the night belonged to him. He did not know that the estate security hub had already sent its video feed to multiple off-site servers. He did not know that a medical alert had been transmitted to an emergency triage team contracted specifically for Maria's pregnancy. He did not know that the cameras had identified him as the aggressor, logged the footage, and time-stamped it for legal evidence. He did not know that 6 heavily armored vehicles were racing toward the estate with furious speed. Maria remained motionless. The water now pooled beneath her, reflecting her faint breaths in tiny ripples. Her chest rose and fell with unnatural slowness. Frost collected at the edges of her hair. Her bracelet vibrated again. The red light blinked faster. Her core temperature continued to plummet. Her baby shifted weakly inside her womb, as if trying to brace against the cold. The estate lights flickered once more. A loud chime echoed through the air, different from the alarm. It came from deep within the mansion. The system had escalated the alert. It had activated its highest-level response. The Reyes Emergency Directive. Ethan turned sharply toward the sound. His expression tightened. He cursed again, louder this time. Something in the system's reaction unnerved him. He walked in a slow circle, trying to regain control of the situation. But control had already slipped from him long before the first alert sounded. Far beyond the courtyard, the convoy of SUVs shot down the highway. Snow kicked up behind them in white clouds. The drivers communicated in short, clipped sentences. Vital signs remain unstable. Temperature falling rapidly. Time to arrival: 5 minutes. The team leader, a A broad-shouldered man with eyes sharp as a blade studied the live feed displayed on the dashboard. When he saw Maria lying motionless under the water, his jaw clenched with controlled fury. They accelerated. Inside the mansion, the interior alarms activated. Doors unlocked automatically for emergency entry. Heating systems shut down in certain sectors to redirect power to the courtyard floodlights. The security system had shifted into full medical rescue mode. Every decision the house made now centered on saving Maria's life. Ethan heard the distant hum of something approaching. Tires on gravel, engines rumbling with growing intensity. His head snapped toward the front of the property. Unease flashed across his face. For the first time that night, he sensed something that made his pulse spike. It was not guilt. It was not fear for Maria. It was fear of being caught. He took one step back from her body, then another. The water continued to pound against her, but he no longer watched her. His eyes were locked on the distant sound. He squinted into the night, trying to understand what was coming for him. He did not have to wait long. The first SUV burst through the front gates with explosive force. The heavy metal doors slammed against the stone walls. Sparks scattered across the driveway. The second SUV followed, then the third, each one more aggressive than the last. Their headlights cut through the courtyard like beams of judgment. The engines roared like beasts released from chains. Ethan stumbled backward, startled by the sudden violence of their arrival. His hands flew up instinctively, unsure whether to defend himself or surrender. His heart hammered against his ribs. He took another step back, nearly slipping on the wet marble. The SUVs screeched to a halt in perfect formation. Doors flew open in unison. 6 men in tactical black uniforms poured out, moving with lethal efficiency. Their boots hit the ground in rapid, synchronized thuds. Their eyes surveyed the courtyard with brutal focus. The Reyes security emblem glinted on their chests. Ethan finally understood. They were not here for him. They were here for her. The leader raised his fist, signaling the team to spread. He shouted orders with sharp precision. Medical kit forward. Thermal blankets ready. Shield from the water. Move now. 3 men sprinted toward Maria. 2 others positioned themselves between Ethan and her. One locked eyes with Ethan and spoke in a calm, icy tone that made Ethan's stomach drop. Do not move. The courtyard had changed. The night had changed. Control belonged to no one but them now. And the moment the first security officer reached Maria's still body, the battle to save her life began. The courtyard shook with the force of the SUVs stopping, their engines growling like predators claiming territory. The surge of motion shattered the icy stillness that had smothered Maria minutes earlier. The men of Reyes security moved fast, cutting through the frozen air with sharp, determined steps. Their black tactical uniforms contrasted against the pale stone, each movement precise, each breath visible in the winter air. They carried purpose in their stride, a purpose fueled by the orders of a father who had seen his daughter collapse on a screen. Ethan stood frozen as the officers approached. His mind raced, searching for an explanation, a defense, anything that could make this moment less catastrophic. But his mouth opened and closed silently. No words formed. The presence of the team made it impossible to pretend he still had control. Their eyes swept over him with cold neutrality, as if assessing a threat that was no longer theoretical. 2 officers positioned themselves between Ethan and Maria. One extended his arm slightly, a barrier that needed no explanation. Do not come closer. Do not interfere. The message was clear without being spoken. The remaining officers reached Maria. They knelt beside her trembling form as water continued to crash over her. The central officer, a broad man with steady hands, pressed 2 fingers to her neck. His jaw tightened immediately. He called out for thermal blankets, for a pulse oximeter, for immediate extraction. His voice carried no panic, only urgency, the kind born from training and the awareness that seconds mattered. The water hitting Maria's back created a mist that curled around her like a shroud. One officer stepped behind the shower valve and shut it off with a forceful twist. The roar of water ceased. The courtyard fell into an eerie quiet, except for the wind whispering through the night. Maria's body sagged further without the pressure of the water holding it rigid. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with a faint bluish tint along her lips and fingertips. Her belly rose weakly beneath her soaked dress. Each tiny movement was proof she was still fighting. The officer closest to her gently rolled her onto her back. Her head lolled to one side. Her eyes were half open, glassy, unfocused. He placed a hand against her cheek and recoiled slightly at the freezing temperature. He called out her name, Maria. "Maria, can you hear me?" She did not respond. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. Another officer lifted her wrist to read the medical bracelet. The red light blinked rapidly. The screen displayed her falling temperature and unstable heart rhythm. The data alone was alarming. Combined with her physical state, it painted a picture of a woman standing on the edge of a precipice. The team wasted no time. They stretched a reflective thermal blanket across her torso, tucking it around her shoulders and belly to retain as much heat as possible. They placed warming pads along her sides. Their movements were synchronized, fluid, the choreography of professionals who had rehearsed these life-saving actions countless times. One monitored her breathing. Another checked her pulse. A third prepared to lift her for transport. Ethan watched all of it, his expression tightening with each passing second. His hands twitched. He took a half-step forward. One of the officers snapped his head in Ethan's direction and spoke with chilling clarity. "Do not come any closer." Ethan's mouth opened in protest. He managed to force out a few words. "She is overreacting. It was cold water. She needed to calm down." The officer stared at him, as if he had spoken in a language that no human with a conscience would understand. His voice dropped to a controlled, dangerous calm. "Sir, what you did could have killed her." The words struck Ethan harder than any physical blow. He stepped back again, legs unsteady. He glanced at Maria, wrapped in thermal blankets and unconscious on the marble. For the first time that night, something that resembled fear flickered across his face. Not fear for her, fear for himself. The officers began lifting Maria. They handled her with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the brutality she had endured moments earlier. Her head rolled slightly as they raised her. Her lips parted with a weak, rattling breath. Her fingers twitched as if reaching for something only she could see. One officer leaned close and whispered encouragement. "Maria, stay with us. You are safe now." Another placed a steadying hand on her belly, checking for signs of fetal distress. He felt a faint movement beneath his palm. Relief crossed his eyes for the briefest moment. They moved her onto a stretcher that had been carried in from one of the SUVs. The straps clicked into place. A portable heater was positioned near her feet. Her vital signs were read continuously. Her pulse remained faint. Her breathing shallow. Time was slipping. As they prepared to carry her toward the waiting vehicle, the team leader turned to face Ethan fully. The courtyard lights cast harsh shadows across his stern features. He spoke with the authority of a man who had just witnessed an unforgivable act. "You will step aside. Now." Ethan hesitated. His jaw clenched. But he moved. The officers walked past him, carrying the woman he had sworn to protect, the woman he had nearly killed. The wind rustled the edges of the thermal blanket. A low groan escaped Maria's lips, so soft it could have been mistaken for wind. The officers hurried toward the SUV. The back doors opened. The heater hummed louder. Maria's stretcher slid into the vehicle with practiced efficiency. The convoy was minutes away from departure. But before the doors closed, the team leader turned once more, his voice cold and final. "Her father is on his way." A shudder passed through Ethan's body. Justice had arrived. And punishment was coming. The courtyard, once his domain, no longer belonged to Ethan. The moment Maria's stretcher disappeared into the back of the SUV, the atmosphere shifted. The cold itself seemed to sharpen, slicing through the last remnants of whatever control he believed he had. What remained was a man standing alone on wet marble, surrounded by trained professionals who had just witnessed the consequences of his cruelty. The team leader stepped forward. His eyes were icy and unblinking. Every other officer paused, watching him, waiting for the next command. Ethan felt their attention pressed down on him like a weight. He tried to straighten his posture. He tried to look calm, but his throat tightened. His pulse throbbed against his neck. His breathing turned shallow. The leader spoke in a voice that was low and deliberate. "Sir, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Do not interfere. Do not leave the property. Do you understand? Ethan bristled at the order. This was his home. These were his grounds. No one spoke to him like that. He opened his mouth, ready to assert some illusion of authority, but nothing coherent formed. The officer's stare crushed the words before they left his throat. Behind the leader, one of the officers retrieved the medical bracelet data from Maria's wrist and transmitted it to a secured tablet. The screen filled with time-stamped records of her dropping temperature, collapsing heart rate, and erratic oxygen levels. Another officer uploaded the courtyard footage into an encrypted drive. The high-definition video played silently. Ethan's face appeared in brutal clarity, his hand pushing her body collapsing, the water beating down, his refusal to help, every second damning. The officers exchanged looks. Ethan saw the shift in their expressions: disbelief, disgust, professional resolve. Not a single one looked surprised. The scenario unfolding in the courtyard was one they had trained to prevent. Tonight, they were collecting evidence of it instead. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. His voice burst out in a strained shout. This is all exaggerated. She was fine earlier. She just overreacted. She always does. The team leader stepped closer. The temperature seemed to drop another degree. Sir, she was minutes from respiratory failure. She is in hypothermic shock. Your neglect could have killed both her and the child. Ethan tried to laugh, but the sound cracked apart halfway. He gestured wildly toward the now silent shower. It was just cold water. People take ice baths all the time. It is not a crime. The officer's jaw tightened. Her clothing was soaked. The air is below freezing. She could not breathe. She was unconscious. You did nothing. These are not opinions. These are facts. Ethan's hands trembled. He clenched them into fists, forcing his voice louder. You do not understand our marriage. You do not understand what she does to provoke me. She pushes me. She knows how to manipulate things. The officer raised a brow. Manipulate. The word hung in the air like a curse. Another officer approached, holding a small thermal scanner. He displayed the reading to the leader. Her skin temperature was 31 degrees. If they had arrived 5 minutes later, her heart could have stopped. Ethan's face pale, his breath hitched. For the first time, he felt the razor edge of reality cutting through his denial. His gaze drifted toward the SUV, where Maria lay, fighting for her life. He swallowed, suddenly unable to speak. The team leader took one step closer. Ethan instinctively backed up. The officer's voice dropped to a tone that made the courtyard feel even colder. Sir, you need to understand something very clearly. This is no longer a private matter. This is a criminal matter. And everything that happened tonight is recorded. The footage has already been transmitted to secure servers. Nothing can be erased. Ethan stumbled over his next breath. He tried to form a response, but a new sound fractured the air. The roar of another engine. The SUV carrying Maria moved first, speeding toward the exit to reach the medical unit. The headlights swept across the courtyard. In their glow, Ethan caught a glimpse of her blanket-wrapped form, her eyelids still closed, her chest rising faintly, a nurse pressing a heater against her side. The sight twisted something in him, but whether it was guilt or fear, he could not tell. The rest of the convoy remained in place. The officers did not relax. They did not soften. They formed a human wall around the courtyard. Then came the sound that froze Ethan completely. The second set of engines, the deeper, heavier ones. A vehicle unlike the others rounded the corner. Black, armored, larger. Its lights cut through the courtyard like a blade of white fire. Everyone turned toward it. Ethan's heartbeat faltered, because he knew exactly who sat inside. Her father, and the night, already turned against him, was about to deliver its final blow. The armored vehicle rolled to a stop with a deep, vibrating growl that made the marble under Ethan's feet tremble. Its headlights stayed fixed on him, a blinding white glare that felt like an accusation. Ethan shielded his eyes, heart hammering so violently he felt it in his throat. Every instinct told him to run, but his legs remained locked in place, heavy and useless. The rear door of the vehicle opened slowly, not rushed, not frantic, slow, controlled, dominant. A figure stepped out, wrapped in a dark coat, shoulders broad, posture unyielding. Manuel Reyes did not look toward the officers first. He looked straight at Ethan. That single look carried the weight of a verdict. His eyes were sharp, burning with a fury that no voice could capture. Ethan's breath hitched. He felt his stomach drop, as if gravity itself had turned against him. Manuel's presence filled the courtyard like a storm-building pressure. His steps were measured, echoing sharply with each strike against the stone. The officers snapped into formation around him. Respect radiated from them. Fear rippled from Ethan. Manuel spoke without raising his voice. "Where is my daughter?" The team leader gestured toward the departing SUV. "She has been stabilized and is being transported. Her condition is serious, sir." A flash of pain passed through Manuel's eyes, quickly replaced by something colder, focused, lethal. He turned back to Ethan, who was desperately trying to stand tall, trying to look composed, but his shaking hands betrayed him. Manuel stepped closer until only a few feet separated them. The courtyard lights carved harsh lines across his face. He stared at Ethan the way a man might stare at someone who had already crossed the point of forgiveness. When he spoke, his voice was low and steady. "Tell me exactly what you did to her." Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing coherent came out. His throat constricted. His mind raced. He lifted his hands, gesturing vaguely toward the shower. It was cold water. She was being dramatic. "She provoked me. You do not understand her." The officers around him stiffened with visible disgust. Manuel's expression did not change. He simply turned his head to the team leader. "Show me." The leader raised a tablet that displayed the recorded footage. High-definition images filled the screen. Ethan forcing Maria into the freezing water. Maria collapsing, her body convulsing, her breath failing. Ethan watching her with crossed arms. Manuel watched silently. His face remained still, but the air around him shifted. A man built an empire with decisions measured and deadly. Now he watched the near destruction of his daughter with the eyes of someone who had reached a breaking point that had no return. When he finished, he handed the tablet back with a hand that trembled once. Just once. Then his voice came out in a tone so calm it chilled even the officers. "Arrest him." Ethan's entire body went cold. "What? No! Wait! You cannot! I am her husband!" The team leader stepped forward. His face held no emotion. "Sir, you are being detained for assault on a pregnant woman, reckless endangerment, and potential fetal harm. You have the right to remain silent." Ethan stumbled backward. His voice cracked. "This is insane. I did nothing wrong. She pushed me to it. She always exaggerates. She is manipulating all of you." Two officers grabbed his arms. His knees buckled. His legs scraped across the wet marble. He thrashed weakly. "Let go of me. I did not hurt her. It was cold water. Cold water is not a crime." One officer tightened his grip. "Cold water does not make a woman collapse. Cold water does not stop her breathing. Cold water does not send her body into shock." The clicking sound of metal cuffs echoed through the courtyard. Ethan jerked against them, panic slicing through his chest. His wrists burned from the pressure. His mind scrambled for excuses, for lies, for anything that could turn this nightmare around. Manuel stepped closer. His shadow fell across Ethan like a final judgment. He spoke with a quiet intensity that shook Ethan to his core. "You nearly killed my daughter. And my grandchild. The law will handle you now." Ethan shook his head violently. "I am innocent. You are all overreacting. She will tell you. She will explain." Manuel's eyes narrowed. "She cannot speak. She is fighting for her life." The words hit Ethan harder than the cold ever had. For the first time, fear swelled in his chest, deep and suffocating. The officers dragged him toward a waiting patrol car at the edge of the courtyard. Blue and red lights began to flash, bouncing off the marble and casting violent streaks across Ethan's pale face. The cold night air carried the sound of his ragged breaths as he tried to twist free. Behind them, Manuel stood perfectly still, watching with a look carved from stone and heartbreak. The team leader approached him quietly. "We will update you with her condition as soon as we receive word from the medical unit." Manuel nodded once. His eyes never left the driveway, where Ethan was forced into the back seat of the patrol car. The door slammed shut. The locks clicked. And for the first time that night, Ethan Miller understood. This was only the beginning of what he would face. His punishment had just begun. Ethan had always believed that power protected him. Money, connections, influence. These were the shields he thought nothing could pierce. But as the patrol car carried him through the iron gates of his estate, he felt those shields cracking, splintering, collapsing one by one. He had no idea how fast they were already turning to dust. At the same moment, the doors closed on him. A breaking alert flashed across dozens of screens in corporate offices around the city. A notification pinged throughout Miller Industries. Emergency shareholder advisory. CEO involved in domestic violence incident. Footage submitted to authorities. Executives who were preparing for bed suddenly froze in front of glowing monitors. Phones vibrated across desks. Laptops lit up with unread messages. The board members stared at the initial report, disbelief shifting rapidly into panic. They replayed the footage sent by the Reyes security system, Ethan pushing Maria, water crashing over her, her body collapsing, his expression cold and indifferent. Within seconds, the board convened an emergency call. Voices clashed, angry, confused, terrified. One insisted they needed to distance themselves immediately. Another demanded Ethan be removed from every public-facing position. A third warned that federal regulators would be involved by morning. The company's legal team had already begun drafting a disclosure statement. Every second mattered now. Then came the markets. Before midnight, Miller Industries' stock plummeted. Investors did not wait for details. The footage circulating online was enough. Rumors spread like wildfire. Domestic abuse. Attempted harm to a pregnant woman. Negligence. Assault. Words that destroyed reputations in hours, not days. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. The stock dropped 17% in 1 hour. Then 19. Then 22. Ethan did not know any of this yet. He sat in the back of the patrol car, wrists cuffed, head pounding, breath shallow. But across the city, phones kept ringing. Journalists pounced on the story. Newsrooms scrambled for statements. Miller Industries found itself buried under a tidal wave of headlines. CEO arrested in late-night incident. Pregnant wife hospitalized. Video evidence suggests assault. By the time the patrol car reached the precinct, the world outside had already turned against him. Back in the corporate tower, a familiar name appeared on a call log, their largest investor, the one who controlled nearly 15% of the company. His message was brief, cold, and final. Pulling out. Effective immediately. That decision spiraled into a series of catastrophic ripples. 2 major partners canceled ongoing contracts. A bank froze a credit line used for expansions. A tech firm halted a joint venture. Emails flooded in, each one severing ties with Ethan Miller. Inside the holding cell, Ethan felt a growing tremor of dread. The silence of the concrete walls was suffocating. He stared at the floor, replaying Manuel's voice in his mind. "You nearly killed my daughter. And my grandchild." The words had cut deeper than he expected. But he pushed the thought aside. His ego clawed for survival. None of this is real. They are overreacting. The company will fix it. The board will defend me. He did not know the board had already begun drafting a removal notice. Minutes later, a police officer approached the bars and handed him a single sheet of paper, a notification from corporate legal counsel. Effective immediately, Ethan Miller was suspended from his role as CEO pending investigation. He read it twice. The words blurred. His breath grew rapid. His fingers shook. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. Outside the cell, the officer watched without sympathy. A man who had seen too many husbands claim innocence after leaving their wives broken. Then came another blow. The officer returned with a second update, this one from the bank overseeing Ethan's personal accounts. Due to the ongoing investigation, several assets had been placed under temporary review. Certain accounts were frozen. Luxury payments flagged. His credit privileges suspended. Ethan felt something close to suffocation. His wealth was his identity, his power, his leverage. Without it, he was naked. Meanwhile, the footage from the courtyard continued to spread online. Millions of viewers watched the moment he forced Maria into the freezing water, the moment she collapsed, the moment he stood there with his arms crossed, unmoved. Outrage ignited. Comments raged beneath every post. Influential activists demanded charges. Women's groups called for maximum sentencing. Strangers from around the world cried for justice. By dawn, the incident had become a national scandal. Hashtags trended. News anchors dissected every frame of the footage. Miller Industries plummeted even lower. Employees voiced disgust. A petition circulated calling for his permanent removal. Stockholders demanded compensation for damages. His empire was falling apart faster than he could comprehend. Back in the silence of his cell, Ethan finally understood something he had never considered possible. Money could silence people. Money could buy influence. Money could bury rumors. But money could not bury the truth caught on camera. The truth had reached the world. The world had judged him. And nothing would ever restore the life he had destroyed with his own hands. The hospital room was silent except for the rhythmic hum of machines and the faint beeping of a heart monitor. Pale morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin lines across the floor. The air was warm, sterile, safe. A stark contrast to the freezing courtyard, where Maria's life had nearly slipped away just hours earlier. She lay in a hospital bed, wrapped in thick blankets. Her skin, once icy blue, had regained a fragile warmth. Her breathing was steady now, shallow but stronger. A heating unit beside her pulsed gently, feeding warmth back into her body piece by piece. For a long while she did not move. Her mind drifted somewhere between sleep and memory. Water, cold, darkness, pain. Then, nothing. Slowly, her eyelashes fluttered. Her first breath came with a sharp, startled gasp, as if her lungs were waking from a long winter. Her eyes opened. The ceiling above her came into focus. She blinked again. Her fingers twitched. She lifted a trembling hand to her chest, feeling the rise and fall, feeling life again. Then she felt it, a faint kick beneath her ribs. Her baby. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. Her hand moved to her belly, cradling the small swell beneath the hospital blanket. The fear she had carried through those final moments in the courtyard burst inside her chest. But the movement under her palm was strong, real, alive. Her child had survived. She let out a sob that was equal parts relief and heartbreak. A shadow moved near the door. Heavy footsteps approached. She turned her head with effort and saw him. Manuel Reyes stepped into the room. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion, his eyes red from hours without sleep. But the moment he saw her awake, something broke inside him. His breath hitched, his stoic expression faltered. And for the first time since the alert had reached him, he allowed himself to feel. He moved to her bedside in 3 quick steps. Maria reached for him with a trembling hand. He took it in both of his, lowering his forehead to her fingers as a choked sound escaped him. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "You scared me. You scared all of us." Maria swallowed hard. Tears streamed down her cheeks and into the pillow. She whispered one question. "The baby. Is he all right?" Manuel lifted his head. He nodded, though his voice shook. Strong heartbeat. "They are monitoring him, but he is a fighter, just like you." Maria closed her eyes in gratitude, her body sinking into the mattress with quiet relief. For several moments they stayed like that, father and daughter, 2 souls bound by terror and love. Manuel held her hand as if afraid she might disappear again. She squeezed his fingers gently, letting him know she was still here. A soft knock interrupted the silence. A doctor stepped inside, her face calm and confident. She checked Maria's vitals, reviewed the monitor, and nodded with professional assurance. "Your condition is stable. You were very close to hypothermic collapse, but the rapid response saved both you and your baby. You need rest, warmth, and monitoring. But you will recover." Maria let out another quiet sob. The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder before leaving them alone. Manuel sat down beside the bed. His expression changed. The sadness faded. What replaced it was steel. Resolve. Fury restrained only by discipline. Maria saw it. She knew what it meant. She whispered, her voice raw. "He is in jail, isn't he?" Manuel nodded once. He looked her in the eyes. "And he will stay there. The officers recorded everything. The footage is airtight. The medical reports confirm the damage he caused. His company is collapsing. His power is gone. And now, there is one more step. One only you can take. He reached into his coat and pulled out a document. He placed it gently on the tray beside her bed. A pen rested on top. Maria stared at the paper. A restraining order. Permanent, immediate, irrevocable, and beneath it, a second document. Charges, assault, endangerment, attempted fetal harm. Her hand trembled as she reached for the pen. Her entire life had been shaped by fear. Fear of his temper, fear of his threats, fear of waking up another day in a house that felt like a prison. Not anymore. She pressed the pen to the paper. The signature was shaky, but it was hers. A mark of finality, a mark of freedom. Manuel exhaled shakily. Pride filled his eyes. He kissed the top of her hand. When Maria sank back into her pillows, she felt a weight lift from her chest. For the first time in months, she breathed without fear. She closed her eyes and let warmth settle around her. Not just the warmth of the hospital bed, but the warmth of survival. The warmth of a future she had almost lost. A future she now reclaimed. Outside the room, the world stirred with headlines and outrage, lawsuits and investigations, criminal charges and corporate collapse. Ethan Miller's empire was falling brick by brick, crushed under the truth he could not escape. But inside the quiet hospital room, Maria's story was no longer about him. It was about a woman who lived, a child who survived, and a new life waiting to begin. Justice had arrived, and Maria Reyes was finally free.